Aloha, namaste. This is Alexis with Radha Home Yoga, and I'm here to talk about our full moon that's coming tomorrow, Tuesday, September 1st. So we're starting off the month with this full moon, and it's going to be in the night, in the evening. So we're going to see the moon and sun directly across from each other at 10:22 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So this particular full moon is the halfway point of our new moon cycle. And the new moon cycle that we're in is that of Leo. So remember, we started off the month, the true month, which is the moon month. The Gregorian calendar month is starting with this full moon, but the actual month is supposed to be measured from moon to moon. So each new moon is a moon cycle, and that's a legitimate month from the perspective of astronomy and of course astrology. Our Gregorian calendar accounts for things like, the blue moon where you have two full moons in a month, but that's not actually possible. You can't actually have two full moons in a month, in a true month, because a month is literally a moon cycle. So in this month, this new moon cycle that we're in of Leo, we started off with a lot of fire, right? Everything moved right before the new moon, excuse me. We had the sun move into its own sign of Leo, we had Mars moved into its own sign of Aries, and we had Jupiter in Sagittarius, still its own sign, but all the fire signs for those different grahas, for those different planets. So all that fire immediately combusted in the environment, right? We immediately saw California catching on fire. We immediately saw people getting heated internally as well. And maybe you in your own life found yourself really heating up on something that you were working towards or ending. So if you were, if you had some kind of projects or ideas or things that you had sort of ruminating in your mind, maybe you really found yourself putting forth effort on them. If there were things that you were ready to close and end, done deal. You just went ahead and did it, because the fire signs really give us that oomph, that power to just do things and not to really question, second guess, and base it on how other people feel. So that's been a big theme for the last 2 weeks, and we've seen it explode literally from the environment to the social political scene to our own personal lives, most likely. As we move into the second half of the month, we get this chance to reflect on that, this chance to reflect on that quality. And in Leo, it's really about sort of this individual power that we hold, and how can we personally possess the power, magnetism, and leadership we need to do what we need to do. In Aquarius, where the full moon is, we look more towards the collective for that. We look to the collective, both from a place of humility, a place of like, I can't do this alone. I really need the world community to help me, or my personal community to help me, but also to look in terms of systems and structures that help facilitate everybody, that help everyone get their needs met. We literally move from a more selfish place to a less selfish place, in terms of our visions for the world. Rather than maybe whatever you started working on was this one man, one woman show that you just had to do, in this whole operation. And maybe now you're thinking about how nice it would be to work with several other people and have the workload split, and also the glory, fame, money, and everything else split. So this is what Aquarius really brings us to do. It brings us to allow our visions of that come from our own personal creativity, and see them, how they could be even bigger and even greater and even more wonderful if they were accommodating everyone and also allowing for other hands in it. So getting help, right? And having more people help. So this is going to be a theme that we reflect upon. Again, it's the full moon, it's not the new moon, so it's not the cycle. Cycle is still a Leo cycle, but this is the reflection we're seeing. Like, wow, what ways was our grab for power, or our independent, desire to really stand in our own fire, limiting for us? And how could that be better if we really opened up what we're doing and what we're seeing and what we're envisioning to something that brings in more people, and maybe even all people, which is really what Aquarian imaging looks like. It looks like visions for the future, very much futuristic, very much like, the things we haven't seen yet. And ideas, it's an air sign, so it really lives in the land of ideas, rather than that fiery action that we saw just burst ourselves out in the beginning of this new moon. but it's really about how to make those ideas better. And it needs the basis of Leo. All of these things, when we talk about the opposite of a sign, and every full moon is the opposite of the new moon cycle, because that's where the sun reflects the light on the moon, is it's a chance to look at where that energy starts and how it grows. So in the sense of Leo Aquarius, that foundational creativity, that foundational power, and even arrogance that occurs there, that allows you to sort of foolishly imagine what can be, but not just foolishly imagine it, but do it, foolishly make something be. That is necessary if we're going to be able to create systems and structures and ways of doing things that benefit all. We need to have both. We need to have that lineage. Remember last time we talked a lot about lineage, because the star was Magha. The star that actual new moon fell in was the star of the Pitris, of the ancestors. So we were really tapping into our lineage and tapping into our ancestral lines and what we were fed that was leading us here. And we're going to see both, right? We're going to see the foolhardy. We're going to see what didn't work. And then we're also going to see what maybe we need to tap into and retain, or at least allow to inform us. We have a tendency with Aquarius to sometimes shun the past and shun anything that is, leadership module, or, something that looks like one person holding power, or anything, resembling a kingship. We have a tendency to really shun that when we're in the Aquarius. Everything is about the future. Everything's about the new. But you can't really do the new right if you don't look at what went wrong and right in the past. If you don't have that connection, the new part is really going to be faulty also. And it's going to have those same problems of power struggle that the old way had. It's just going to be less obvious and more stratified and more held in different hands, or even not in hands at all, right? Even in like computers or robotics or all these other kinds of technologies, where we can't see how that might have taken away some humanity, or something that people needed in order to survive and thrive. So that's going to be the thing we see globally and socially right now. Is it's like, okay, we saw how ugly that hard-handed rule is. We saw how bad it is when it's like one person wielding all this power. But can we also put that same bright light on the collective power, and how that can also be really faulty, and how each, like if you think about a computer, you think about a machine, but most of us are really familiar with computers at this point. If you have like one bug or one virus or one thing that's wrong, one program you downloaded that doesn't work, or one little, if you've ever watched your IT guy or watched someone help you fix your computer, I'm assuming maybe you're not doing that yourself. I've had to actually be walked through it by IT guys before. And sometimes it's this random little coding that just got switched, and it made everything not work. It made the printers not work. It made this program not work, and this program not work. It literally shut down an entire office worth of work for hours, maybe even days, from one little couple numbers that are off. And that's what can happen in the collective vision, is that there are so many hands in it, but because everything relies on everything else, it's built on each other and it works together in a functional system. And if it's really functional, then it's sort of elegant and beautiful the way it all works together. But if any one of those pieces is off, it throws everything off. And if we look at that from the perspective of our beliefs and our ideals and our ideas that we've been dealing with in this Gemini Sagittarius nodal axis, we can see that even one belief that's really faulty leads to all this misinformation, because you're still believing this one thing. And if you've ever had a conversation with someone who stubbornly believes something, you can give them all the evidence in the world that that thing they're founding all their opinions on is not true, and it won't change anything for them. They are still stuck in that mindset of this is what's right, even though everything that it was founded on is now wrong, and they can even see that and admit to that. It doesn't change their perspective. It doesn't change what information they're willing to put out and get back in again. And this is sort of the think we've all been stuck in, is this Gemini Sagittarius axis. So each one of us has our one faulty belief that, and maybe some of us have many, that we're stuck in, that's changing the way we're getting information. Well, from the going back to this full moon, that's on a structural level. When you really think about structures and systems, and especially social or political systems, which is a lot of what Aquarius is about, is how does our social world work? That's why we see a lot of social justice when planets are in Aquarius, because it's the collective trying to take back the power. But each collective is made up of individual little lions, right? Individual little kings and queens who are trying to assert their knowledge, maybe their power. Maybe some people are more power hungry. Some people are just stuck in the details of what they're doing. Everybody sort of has something to bring to the table. And that's really ideal in how a society would work, is that everyone brings their strengths to the table. But without oversight on some of those things, something can go wrong. You know, someone can miss a little detail who's in charge of details. Somebody who's coming from more of a power perspective can alter something so that they get some power that they shouldn't be getting. Somebody over here could miss some, you know, some data in the science, or the science could be used by the person in power to sway things. There's a lot of places it can go wrong, and especially because everybody does have that lion part of them. So there's this part that everyone has to agree. And a lot of times what we have is compromise that occurs that actually literally compromises even truth or the original goal, the original plan. We see this a lot with Congress. If they make a bill and there's something in it that gets kind of stuffed in that no one agrees with, then it either totally kills the bill, or it still gets passed with that thing that didn't really have anything to do with whatever the original bill was. There's so many ways we can see that just one small fault can really create quite a lot of damage. Excuse me. So that's going to be a lot of what we reflect on with this last 2 weeks of this lunar cycle. And we have a lot of shifts for September, and I'm going to do a separate video where I talk about these different shifts because they're big. They're all really kind of massive, and only one of them is actually happening in the next 2 weeks before my next new moon report, which is Jupiter going direct on September 12th. We've had Jupiter retrograde for many months now, and it's been good in the sense that it brought us back into Sagittarius. So it brought Jupiter back into the land of maybe having beliefs that are really resonant with truth, and allowing us to see the ways in which our beliefs and ideals are really stemming from something, and make sure that we keep bringing it back to trying to hook it into truth, as opposed to just some past thing we have or something like that. We've had a lot of issues with Sagittarius and Gemini since this Rahu Ketu, since this nodal axis has been there for the last year and a half. And with Jupiter in Sagittarius, we have more opportunity to really expand our understanding of what we believe and really try to hook it back into true teachings and beliefs that we have that are founded in truth, things that are maybe time tested or, you know, passed along through lineage, as opposed to just these sort of wild beliefs we have, or beliefs that we learned from our families and our ancestral patterns that might be based in a lot of falseness, or might be really based in society at the time. A lot of times we'll have beliefs that come from a certain time period that maybe an ancestor lived in, or maybe our parents lived in, or maybe we lived in, and it's stuck. If you ever talk to an old person who gets really stuck in their time, you know, they really see things still through the lens of when they were a child or when they were growing up. And it's hard for them to understand that that's not the way things are anymore. So that thought they have is really stuck in time. It's not transcendent. True beliefs are transcendent of time. They don't have to do with 2020. They don't have to do with a year and a time and a place. They work all the time, through all the ages. And we are short on those kind of beliefs in this day and age. We have much less context for that level of spirituality, and much more of a society that focuses on beliefs that are about the here and the now. And maybe 20 years ago, 40 years ago, 100 years ago, we might reference, but they're all stuck in time. They're not transcendent. They would not work anywhere, anytime, any place. They're very much contingent on specific factors that exist in this time. And that's a big difference. It's a big difference. And you can really see when Jupiter's traversing the sky, how that comes out. When Jupiter's in places like Libra, people get very fixated, and Aquarius, people get very fixated on the social truths, the social beliefs, but those are never transcendent. Those are always going to be stuck in time and place. And they're very idea related. So they're not coming from a real connection to spirit. And as a result, they stay in that land. Doesn't mean that good things don't happen at those times. Those are times of social justice. Those are times when people maybe fight old paradigms that don't work anymore, but it's a different kind of truth. And we need to understand that difference if we're ever going to personally evolve, you know, and of course, ideally collectively, but it's it's looking rough for that. In some ways, I see people really growing in mass. Like I see many more people evolving, but at the same time, society really seems to be doing its best to hold people back, and people really seem to fall into those cracks, those idea cracks, and get stuck in the knowledge and really lose the bigger picture a lot. So I would say 2020 is not the year for full global evolution, but it can be your year for evolution, because it is actually a very powerful year. There's a lot of transformation occurring now, and really depending on your chart and where things hit you, this could be a very powerful year for you and your growth and your evolution. So like I said, Jupiter is going to be going direct, and that's going to be a huge blessing for all of us. It's a short period of time that we have this, where Jupiter is in its own sign, Sagittarius, and it's direct from September 12th to November, I believe it's 17th, 16th, 19th. So from September 12th to November 19th, we have Jupiter in its own sign, forward moving, not retrograde. This is going to be a very important time to connect with your teachings, to connect with your belief systems, to connect with your higher wisdom, and really allow it to find that connection. Because if it's still stuck on all these random beliefs that you have that you don't really understand, it's going to continue to cause problems. And the thing with Jupiter is this little short stint of forward motion in his own sign is just that. It's a short stint. And then he's going back into Capricorn. And I'm going to talk about more about that in that broader video that I'm going to be bringing for the rest of 2020. But that transit from Jupiter to Sagittarius to Capricorn is a big one, because Sagittarius is his own sign where there's a lot of expansion, a lot of hope, a lot of generosity, and a lot of good spiritual teachings available. And in Capricorn, things get constricted. Everything becomes fear-based, time-based, saving, preservation-based, like literally life preservation-based. And we saw this from a little period of time this year, from I think it was March until June, and it was literally like lockdown started, everything became, stay at home, don't do anything basically, and anything you touch is going to kill you, and that whole mentality that we just went through is like a glimpse into what it's going to be like. And Jupiter was moving retrograde through most of that. So we've had a taste, and it was very fear-based and very constrictive. And a lot of people feel really good about it. Saturn is actually in Capricorn, his own sign. And so Jupiter's not just living there alone, but Jupiter's living with Saturn there. And people who have a lot of, maybe they have Jupiter in Capricorn or Jupiter in some kind of more fearful place in their chart, or people who have a lot of Saturn energy, just people in general, oftentimes feel safe when Jupiter's in Capricorn. There's this safety involved there, where it's like, oh, we want everything to be really restrictive and to keep us safe, to protect us from death is really what people are asking for. And right in this time, there's no more exact statement to say. That's literally what people want right now, is to be protected from death. Some people, and other people want to be protected from what they consider worse than death, which is a complete restriction of their freedom to be and to exist. And both of these are actually valid perspectives if you boil it down to those basic premises and you take away all the other beliefs you have and all the other ideals you have, it's a valid thing to be afraid of your freedom being taken, and it's a valid thing to be afraid of dying. You know, there's a lot more involved there, and I'm not going to get involved in the politics of that, but that perspective, or that feeling, that like total fear feeling that comes out, and it comes on all sides of the matter, because people will feel that fear of having their freedoms taken will come out just as strong as people being afraid that they're going to die. So both ends of that will create a lot of tension in our world, in ourselves, in our person, in our government. Jupiter has a lot to do with laws and governance, you know, courts and judges and governors. You know, technically the sun and Leo is government and is presidents, and I would think governor is kind of similar to a president. But a lot of the laws that get made, and that sort of right and wrong, the notion of the morality of law and the judgment of law that gets passed, and the actual rules and stuff like that, comes with Jupiter. So we will see that get very constrictive. So this is a time to take what you believe and really line it up with something big, something transcendent if possible, and to really also dial into yourself. So another big transit I'm going to be talking about is the nodal axis switching, which is happening on September 19th. So we have the nodes moving out of this Gemini Sagittarius axis that they've been in for a year and a half. And all of us collectively are really going to want to sort of root down. Rahu going into Taurus is going to bring our north node, that part of us that really has kind of an obsessive quality and an immature, uncertain, lacking confidence, the quality of just wanting to take an experience but really not knowing how to do that, is really in the Taurus arena. So we're going to be seeking security. We're going to be seeking, you know, food, growing food, you know, community, family values, things that feel good and are sensually pleasing to us. We're going to want to really have that sort of grounded Taurus energy in our life. And so right now we can already feel the energy of the nodes shifting. And if you have, you know, if you know what axis it is in your chart, and if you're on my email list, then you got sent that free report already that went through all the 12 signs and showed you where it was in your chart. That will start to be already coming up for you. You'll already see that focus on that area of your life really starting to pop. But also just the idea that you want to ground, that you want to be somewhere that you feel comfortable, that you feel good, that you feel like you can live your best life and actually be happy, rather than just running in fear, or, you know, having this sort of ideological basis for whatever choices you're making. It's a time to really just bring yourself in, like bring it all in, take all those ideals, all those fights, all that internet stuff, and just draw it into what matters to you. What are your values? What do you think is important? What do you need to feel secure and comfortable and happy for the next year and a half? And that's really the focus of where you want to be putting your attention right now as we move into this really, really tumultuous month. So we will have Saturn also going direct at the end of the month, both Jupiter and Saturn going direct this month. And again, I will get to that with you guys really soon. And Mars is still in Aries at the moment, but he is going to be moving, let's see, September 9th, so just in a 9 days from now, he's going to start his retrograde period. So right before Jupiter goes direct. And then he's going to start moving back into Pisces. And on October 3rd, so just a few days after, we're going to see Mars back in Pisces again, retrograde. So this fiery, active time that we have is, again, kind of, it's a time to seize upon what you need to get done. First of all, Mars is action, discipline, courage. So right now is a time to really establish those routines you need to establish, or if there's some big thing you need to really get done, if there's something you just started and you really need that fiery energy to help you before he goes retrograde. So before September 9th is ideal for actually manifesting action on the stage, especially while he's in Aries. But once he's retrograde, you're going to start to see that action really kind of peter out in the outside world. You'll become very attuned to it internally, what needs to be done and how you want that to look. But to actually have it manifest outside of your body, or using your body, you're going to need that forward motion. So you have about 9 days on that, and then he's retrograde, but then Jupiter goes direct. So you have a real chance to align those principles and ideals and make sure that your actions coming forward when he goes, when Mars is forward again, is going to be aligned. You really need all these things to sort of be in order. And when Mars moves into Pisces, which is going to be October 3rd, at that point, Jupiter will already be direct, and Jupiter is the ruler of Pisces. So the ruler of Mars in Pisces will be direct in its own sign. Mars will be going back into Pisces for a second round. He was just there. So this is a time to sort of revisit that part of us that wants to go deep into our spiritual understandings and our spiritual practices, perhaps wants to make sure we have physical practices in the real world that equal those spiritual things we want to achieve. So what I mean by that is that people often have these really beautiful spiritual concepts. They maybe have read some books and maybe have some form of a practice they do, but most people are not super disciplined with their practice, and they're not good at repeatedly showing up in the same way daily for that practice. And some spiritual groups or organizations or things really don't have any physical practice at all. So you see that, especially with things like Christianity, there's not like yoga. That's not part of Christianity. There's tithing, there's, singing in church, there's showing up to church, which a lot of people can't even do right now. But there's not as much like a formal way of living your life that actually helps you tune into that spiritual quality. There's not physical exercises and dietary choices and things like that as there is in the Vedic system. In the Vedic system, it's all very complete. There's physical exercises, there's dietary choices, there's mantras, there's spiritual choices you make in your daily interactions with people, the yamas and the niyamas, how you conduct yourself as a human. There's your morality. And then there's also reading texts and having this sort of prayerful experience, which is the majority of what you see in a lot of the other religions, at least from my understanding. So if you don't have strong physical practices associated with your spiritual truth, now's the time to develop that, to develop physical ways to manifest that, so that you're not just sort of believing things or having ideas or preaching ideas, which is what we see more than anything, right? Is a lot of preaching, but that it's founded in something that is somatic, that actually is something in your body that can be done. Very, very important. And that we will see with Mars and Pisces this time around, really finding that part of you that is spiritual, but wants to physically do something about that and not just kind of be spiritual. There's a warrior quality to Mars for sure, especially in the water signs, that also really has the courage to look at the shadows or look at the depths of our emotions and the quality they have. And in Pisces, it is a very spiritual sign because it's where we're really merging with source. So it's where we get really broad in our vision of what is, and we have a lot less lines around things. And that's where Mars can get a little tricky there, because that lack of lines, that lack of like boxes and places for things to go is so much kind of muddled or murky, it can be really challenging for Mars to know how to act. We have trouble knowing how to act and how to be courageous when it's all so blurry and sort of like doesn't have a stopping or an ending point. And so it's really important to make those, to like superimpose your starting and ending points. And with Mars in Aries, we have the opportunity to really manifest on the physical plane. And then as we start to internalize that energy, as he traverses back into Pisces, that internalization, along with Jupiter being direct in his own sign, can really help us create a map for ourselves of how we're going to go forward from here. And all of these things are going to be really important, because each little opportunity we have to jump on really solid energy right now is gold. We have this time, these past 2 weeks, we've had not only these planets in their own fire sign, but it's like those are in good dignity, right? It's not just that they're fiery, and it's not just that they're masculine planets in fire signs, which is both of those true. So it means masculine planets really operating in their masculine, really operating in the physical world, getting out there, doing things. But we've also had them in very good dignity because they're their own signs, and Saturn's been in his own sign, right? And the other planets were, Venus was in Gemini, and Mercury in Leo. So Venus is now in Cancer, which I'm going to talk about in a second, and that's not as good of dignity. But when Venus was in Gemini, that was also very good dignity. So really, Mercury was the only planet that wasn't in good dignity when I did my report 2 weeks ago. That's important to pounce on. It's really important to pounce on that. And rather than getting stuck online fighting with people when the only planet that's not in good dignity is Mercury and it's in Leo, so you're wanting to tell everyone what it is, instead of telling everyone what it is, sign off of social media and do something, actually get something done, because this is an opportunity for that. This is a moment in time where that can be. And so each of these little windows of time are something for us to pounce on, because there is a lot of tumult left in this year. This year is not over, and the worst has not even been seen in many ways. And so we need to really self-establish. We can't fix that much out there. All the Twitter and Facebook comments on Earth are not going to fix anything. They're really doing nothing but maybe making you some enemies or getting rid of some friends. Maybe you didn't want them anymore anyway, but they're really not convincing anyone of anything or really doing anything. You're just preaching to the choir mostly, and then pissing other people off. So instead of wasting your energy doing that, it's a time to do things in your life and things that need to be done, things that you really want to get done, and do them now. Because when we move to the end of this year, it's going to get really crazy. And it's really important that you have your ducks in a row, and that you really have a vision, a map, a game plan, and you know what you're doing. Because it's going to be easy to get caught up in the outside world. It always will be. It's always going to be easy to get caught up in society and all that stuff. But if you're grounded in what you're doing, then that will be just a sideshow that you're not even that vested in. So I strongly encourage that. We do have Venus just moved into Cancer at 1 degree for this full moon. And Venus in Cancer it's a little bit problematic, because we see ourselves feeling like sort of victims. We're giving too much in our relationships. We're giving unconditionally. We're just offering our help to people, and we're not getting back in return. And we don't actually feel good about it, although we are the ones who offer ourselves in that way. In romantic relationships, it can be very hard. When people have Venus in Cancer, they almost always feel very used in their relationships. Even though, again, they're the ones actually offering themselves in that way, it tends to feel that way. So this is, again, a time to work on yourself. With all the masculine fire energy, this has been a month where the best thing you can do is really focus on action and focus on things like that. When you get caught up in the relational self, it's going to be more problematic. And with Venus in Cancer, it's a time where you're just going to feel like you've given more than you needed to someone else, and you didn't spend that time on yourself. And it's sort of like an Achilles heel right now. In the midst of all this potential action, that's something that can catch you up, especially if you're a female or you have a lot of feminine planets in your chart, and you tend towards emotionalism, and you tend towards overgiving, and you have a lot of that quality where relationships are a big part of your existence, and you really always bounce yourself off of others and how they feel and stuff like that. It can be a pit, because you can get very emotional and feel like you're stuck in an emotional cycle, and you're not really focusing on the stuff that you need to do for you. So that's a big issue. And with Mercury moving into Virgo, moving into its own sign of Virgo, we can see that there's an opportunity for us to kind of move out of the preaching, barking Leo Mercury thing, where we're telling everyone how it is, and we're acting like we're teachers on every subject, and we're all scientists, we're all philosophers, we're all politicians, we all know everything. We can move out of that into more precise speech. Mercury in his own sign of Virgo is exalted, and it's an opportunity to really get specific with our speech, use words properly, and to say exactly what you mean, and to be very functional and efficient. And that will help alleviate some of the Venus quality, because you can just say what you mean and mean what you say, and not overspeak or not say things that sort of get you in a situation where then you feel like you have to make up for it by doing this or that. There's a lot of trouble that Mercury can get you in Leo, and it doesn't get you in that kind of trouble in Virgo. One issue in relationships can be that sometimes it can feel a little robotic or cold when the communication has a Virgo quality, and that could also hurt the poor Venus in Cancer, because Venus in Cancer is just going to be hurt by everything. But that, you know, just bringing it back to solid communication, bringing it back to communication that says what you feel, what you need, and making your relationships be safe places or buoys for you in this time, as opposed to the focus of your attention. Because if you get caught up in the relational things right now, you're missing the point. You're missing this moment. And this moment is big. It's really big. It's big for our country. It's big for our world. It's big for everything. But for us personally, all of this can be such gold for your own evolution and your own personal path and goals, even your very worldly goals, as well as your higher spiritual goals. This moment is very powerful for that. And I really hope that we don't lose sight of that. So the last thing I want to talk about in this, because I meant to get to this earlier and I didn't, but we are in the specific nakshatra of Shatabishak. And Shatabishak is Shatabishak is the 100 healers. It is the star that shows us where healing needs to be. There's a saying that says if you get sick under Shatabishak, it will take 100 healers to cure you, and even then you might not be cured. And if you find a cure for something under Shatabishak, you will be healed as though if there was 100 healers working on you. So there's this quality of healing, and of course collective healing, because it's in Aquarius, so we can see a societal healing, but also that real danger of, if we get sick under this star, having it never be curable. And of course, I don't mean that to scare individuals about getting COVID or something in this. I just mean, like, as a society, we can see Aquarius is very much a sign of society. It's very much about the collective, as I said before. And so this sickness, this illness, can really be seen as a collective shared thing, not just a virus that's going to hurt us and kill us or make us sick, but a real virus we have, and a real problem we have. And if we really look at what's gone on in the past, even just 6 months, the real thing that's come out as the sickening virus in our society more than anything has been the hatred, the anger, the absolute disregard for other people that we've seen. I mean, it's brutal to watch people on all sides, people who maybe once thought of as lovely and probably still are, but I think the medium of social media and the fact that people have this quality of just typing something out and not being face to face has really created this part where it's almost like people are speaking their inner voice. Like, maybe before you'd be having a conversation with someone and someone would say something, and in your head you'd think, God, that person's really stupid, but you would never say it. Now you're saying it, right? Because it's on social media and it's just the first thing that comes out. It's like, God, you're so stupid, blah, 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 blah. And this whole way that we're operating, where we're just so in such hatred. And I have no doubt that there's powers that be that are sort of orchestrating this or aiding it in any way they can, because it does help other people's agendas. I have no doubt that it helps Facebook, for example, to have people fighting on things, because it raises their algorithms and it allows people to engage more because they're so upset. But I think that we can also all take a step back and find some level of personal accountability, responsibility, and capacity to heal that problem. And considering that the nodal axis is switching into the Taurus Scorpio one, I think we're going to want to get along a lot more. We are not going to be so fixated on, is this information true or not? And is this fitting in my beliefs or not? And we're going to be more fixated on the social and the the getting along, the feeling good, wanting things to work. So even if you completely disagree with your neighbor and you absolutely cannot stand their political beliefs, is it possible that one day you might need eggs and they might have some that you could borrow? Or, you know, is it possible that they might have a heart attack in the middle of the night and you might run over and help take care of their family while they're rushed to the hospital? I mean, is it possible that we need each other even beyond despising our views on things? And is it also possible that our views on things are being fueled by all this information we're getting? And that really, if we stripped away all the propaganda, which basically at this point, all news, mainstream media, and whatever alternative magazines and different and Facebook posts and memes, and it's all propaganda. Every single shred of information is propaganda at this point. It is literally intended to put someone's opinion or a group collective opinion into someone's mind and direct their thinking in that way. There is no objective news anymore. It doesn't exist. So is it possible that that is fueling all this anger, and that actually if you sat down with your neighbor, you would have very similar views? You would actually see things in very similar ways. You might not agree about this specific policy or how to go about that or what's the best way to do it, but the fundamental things you want are the same. We all just want to live our lives with the most amount of peace as possible, the most amount of prosperity that we can have. Most people actually don't want ridiculous amounts of money. Most people don't have like some Jeff Bezos thing or some Bill Gates thing where they like need to be gazillionaires and own the world. Most people don't want that. Most people literally just want enough to survive their family and then have a little extra for vacations or whatever extra things they might want to buy. Very few people even want the responsibility of that much wealth. So we all have very similar shared visions. It's just that we have different ideas of what's going to get us there and also what's in our way. And that's the big one, right? Is what's in our way of getting that. And that's the fuel the politicians, the media, the corporations, everybody else uses to rile us up against each other. So we're at a time when we need healing for that. Like serious healing. Shatabishak is ruled by Varuna, who is he's like the under half of the sky. So if you imagine the sun going to sleep at night, going beneath the horizon, that's Varuna. It's the dark sun. It's the sun we don't see because it's underneath the ocean. Now, of course, somewhere else the sun is shining when it's underneath the ocean. We're not seeing it wherever we are. It's dark. So he's that dark sun, and he's night, and he's the ocean. All of those things are representative of Varuna, and it's a part of us that has to descend into that underworld and that that darker place where we don't get to have bright light shined all over everything. So there's a lot of mysteries and a lot of shadow quality there where we don't see things necessarily exactly as they are. They're not illuminated as they are in the bright day of light. But there's a feeling nature we have. With the sun, we see. With the moon and with that night energy, we feel what something is. And that feeling can be a lot of our collective healing balm. It's not about what's directly in front of us that we can see with our own eyes. As we know, really, what we see is not truth. That's not indicative that something is true, just because we saw it with our own eyes. There's a million different ways that a mirage can be. And yet we hold that as the gold standard in truth so much of the time. Even knowing like videos can be doctored, but I saw that video and it must be true, even knowing that maybe there was 20 minutes before that video even began that we didn't see, that would totally change what we did see. It's impossible for us to not take something in with our eyes and accept it immediately into our brain, because it's a direct transfer. So that kind of information comes to us much more, it embeds itself in us in a much deeper way. And the feeling, the sentiment and stuff like that, we tend to question. And a lot of it also has to do with our society and the fact that we've elevated the sun, we've elevated the masculine, we've elevated things that are seen and done in daylight. And we've sort of discounted a lot of the more feminine energy, which does have a feeling quality to it. So in this full moon, if you really can tap into that underbelly, that underworld of your own self, where you're really sitting in the darkness, and it gets darker earlier now, so you can do that. You can sit and meditate with that energy. And what is it that you need to heal? And what is it that you can have a hand in healing in the world? And how do you want to see this go forward? What is your vision for how things are moving forward in this world? How can we begin the process of healing our own selves? Because there is going to be a lot more calamity in this year to come. You can see it. We can see it in the charts. But the potential to come together and to be community minded and to be family minded and to really focus on that which feels good and that which serves our needs, our real needs, which are food and water and shelter and connection. That is a very strong potential in this time. And I hope for each of us that we really are able to find that for ourselves and to sort of let the fray, the outside fray, or the angry sides of everything just be, just be on their own, and allow your own self to detach from that chaos. Not that you're ignoring it or pretending that it doesn't exist and just sort of checking out, but acknowledging and honoring what is going on in the world, but at the same time managing to hold your own center and your own boundaries around what works for you and what works for your family and your community and those around you. So anyway, it's a little bit longer than I thought I was going to do, but I will have another couple videos coming out in the next week. So look for those. If you're not already a subscriber, you can subscribe to this YouTube channel and hit the bell so that you get alerts when I upload videos. And if you're not a subscriber on my email list, go to www.radhahomeyoga, R-A-D-H-A, home, H-O-M-E, yoga.com, and sign up for the newsletter. You'll get that free report on Rahu Ketu. I'm going to keep the Saturn for all 12 signs also going for maybe the rest of this week. And then that's going to be taken down because we're just going to have the newer report of the new axis. And there'll be lots of more free reports coming soon. Namaste and best wishes.